Conversations from the Frontline, where we empower survivors' voices and challenge the status quo. I am your host, Kelly Humphries, survivor, advocate, author, speaker, researcher, ambassador, and a seasoned former first responder. Supported by the team at Media 8, Off the Cuff with Kel is about growth and healing, leadership through trauma, awareness and understanding. We bring you compelling stories of courage, transformation and expert insights, along with candid discussions on the challenges victims and survivors face. Off the Cuff with Kel celebrates our shared humanity, blending deep vulnerability with humour. Each episode is crafted with love, honesty and the emotions that bind us, whether it's laughter or tears, promoting resilience and hope. Please note, some of the discussions we have can be hard to hear and include sexual abuse themes, online exploitation, domestic and family violence and trauma. So, listener discretion is advised. Please join us as we change the world one story at a time, embracing courage through vulnerability. All right, welcome guys to episode, I think we're at number 28 now, my goodness. So welcome. I've got the two amazing ladies in part 2 of our sextortion, AI, weaponization / harmful sexual behaviors. The amazing Maha, Melham and Melinda Tankard Reist. Welcome back, ladies.
Lovely to be with you again, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, Melinda.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Maha.
We've had so many brilliant comments from people about our last episode, so I'm really excited. And I know Melinda's done some prep. She's all over this. She probably hates that I said that because she thinks she's not prepared. But look, there's no end to talent to these amazing women and their knowledge around this stuff. And I'm just so excited to have the ability to bring this out into the open and to have a really raw discussion about this. And from last week, I wasn't sure what to expect, to be honest, but I know that it was the kind of conversation I always wanted to have on Off the Cuff, where we're not sort of sugarcoating anything and we're not holding anything back and we're making it really kind of real. And I really appreciated the rawness of our conversation on the last episode that we had, because I think it really showed the current scope of what's going on, and we need to hear that. And that's what that's the dream of this podcast, is to bring these conversations into the open, to destigmatize the shame and the fear around these types of incidents, and to kind of strip that away so that there's no normalization here. So the seriousness is understood, but also that there's a response and there's an understanding, especially for the victim survivor who's stuck in these situations and doesn't really know what to do. They think they're alone. And so we need to be having these conversations. And from my perspective, the introduction of artificial intelligence and sextortion and the weaponization of deepfake imagery is something that we don't really understand. We don't have a grasp on, we don't have legislation around, and it's hurting our kids because we just really have no fucking idea. So, we need to get an idea and we need to get on top of this. So I really wanted to thank you both for being brave enough to jump back in and do this again with me. But more than that, I'm just really excited, but also a little bit like, why the fuck should we have to do this anyway, right? But I really want to just hand over to Melinda, to you and Maha, to kind of give us an idea around, I mean, I can explain deepfake, but I think you could probably do a better job of it than I can. And then I want to talk about how deepfakes are weaponized, because I think that's something that we don't really understand. Why is this a thing? What's going on here? What's the big deal?
Well, AI is being weaponized against women and girls in a series of ways. It's enabling new ways of degrading and debasing, dehumanizing and intimidating women. It is acting essentially as an accelerant for more sexual harassment, more intimidation, more more control of women, and we're seeing this emerge with even Australian schoolboys creating so-called deepfake nudifying images of their female peers at school. This is not just happening in one or two schools that we've read about in the media. This is happening, across the country. We will see more sexual harassment built with AI, primarily by nudifying girls, nudifying schoolgirls. Any woman, any girl is at risk. There are over 127 nudifying apps that can be used to make any woman or girl naked, not just to make her naked, to pose her in sexual ways, to pose her with spread legs, to turn her into hentai porn, to turn her into a maid, a school teacher, a pregnant woman. These are some of the genres. AI nudifying apps specifically created to nudify your work colleagues. So this will just increase the threat of harassment to women and to girls. And remarkably, these apps that I'm talking about are not even banned. They're not even illegal, despite what they are leading to. Other ways that AI is being used is to create child sexual exploitation material, child sexual abuse material. But often people have an idea that AI, it's artificial, it's fake. This is misleading because often the AI is modeled on real children, real children to create replica children. But even if it wasn't, the replica children still lead to more sexual abuse fantasies of children.
Can we
saying they're going to be overwhelmed with trying to report and trying to work out what's real and what's fake.
I know that John Rouse, my mentor and friend who works with me at the Alex Lab, often talks about the problems that we're now having with artificial intelligence being created into exploitation material, and then the struggle for law enforcement now to have to sift through what is a real child that they need to rescue and a child that it has been created by artificial intelligence, because it's getting so good. It's so difficult to tell the difference between the two. So, obviously that creates its own set of issues. But if you could just go back, Melinda, and if you can just describe a little bit about what a deep fake is, because I don't think that people really, I mean, some people do, but to understand what a deep fake is and then how that intersects with artificial intelligence.
For sure. Well, what the creation of a deep fake does is it morphs a regular image into an abuse image. It can turn any woman or any girl into porn. It's really a form of porn production where the faces of real women and real girls are superimposed onto explicit images, often pornographic images. Again, we've got to be careful about language here. When we talk about AI, it sounds distant, removed, fake, not real. It's the same with deep fakes. We need to remember, as I said in The Age a couple of days ago, that they're not really fake because it's a real girl's image, a real woman's image scraped from her social media profile, not even private images or images shared privately, but scraped from her social media profiles and then superimposed onto another woman's body. So this is a hybrid form of porn production, mixing and matching different faces, different bodies. In fact, some of the nudifying apps promote themselves as a special feature is swap as many faces as you like, swap as many faces of your work colleagues, use a video of a work meeting and then pornify your work colleagues. Like, again, how is this even allowed? So that's what the deep fake is, the manipulation of social media photos to create non-consensual images. It's a form of image-based abuse.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people have perhaps, different perceptions of what a deep fake is. And again, it's not a fake, right?
Yeah.
I think the point we need to get across is artificial intelligence or deep fakes are not fake. They pull data from different images of already exploited people, or like if it's the creation of child sexual abuse material,
yes,
it's pulling data from children who are already being exploited in order to create that new artificially intelligent child.
That's
So
right.
it's still exploiting and re-exploiting that victim child.
Correct.
And same with adults, there's no consent there for those images to be used. And that's the problem that's sort of, you know, it's being spoken about. And I think that's why Victoria has, I think they're the only state, and maybe Maha, if you know what the current legislation is. I know it's only just changed, so I'm not really fully across it, but I believe Victoria has enacted some laws on this.
Victoria, sorry, I have to apologise. Good evening. And I have to apologise for this sort of religious experience you may be having in viewing me with all these lights from above. Do you know I'm
You know you're enlightened. You're very enlightened.
I'm enlightened, and I'm almost, you know, reaching something But yes, no, I think that's right. Victoria does have some legislation, and I'm just looking for my note on that, because I did. Some Australian states do have legislation that would cover deep fakes. You know, according to Victoria's is one of them.
The federal government has actually just introduced legislation to ban deep fakes sharing, a 6-year penalty for that. Prior to that, I think it was Victoria, but the federal government has certainly announced that it will ban distribution of deep fakes, and that's a 6-year penalty, and there's an extra year of jail term if you created the image. But where I believe that's inadequate is that I think that creation alone should be a criminal.
No, that's right. It's a bit of a tricky point, because the way that creation offence has been sort of built in, it's built in as an aggravation of the principal offence, and the principal offence, or it's also called the underlying offence, is the sharing of the deep fake image. And what that means is, you know, basically the law is aimed at sharing. This new law that's currently being debated is aimed at sharing. And if you also created the image that you're sharing, then you're in double trouble, sort of. Okay. But as what Melinda's pointing to is, it's not a standalone offence for creation, which is, it's right. That's right. Well, that's the way I understand it too. But you did refer to Victoria earlier, Kelly. Victoria does have provision in the Crimes Act that covers offences where people intentionally produce an intimate image depicting another person, and if they know it is or probably is an intimate image, and the production of that image is contrary to community standards of acceptable conduct.
Right.
So that's Victoria. New South Wales also has a provision that could possibly be used under the Crimes Act, section 91P, which it creates an offence where a person intentionally records an image, an intimate image of another person without consent, and knows or is reckless as to whether or not they did, you know, that they didn't consent. So they either know they didn't consent, or they're reckless about whether they did or didn't consent. And the term record an image is fairly broadly defined. So it could be record, take, or capture an image by any means. So, and it refers to intimate images, including images that have been altered to appear to show a person's private parts or a person engaged in a private act, in circumstances where a reasonable person would reasonably expect to be afforded privacy. There's this standard that creeps into law, well, not creeps in, it's prevalent in law about reasonableness, what's reasonable. So you see that there. So yes, there are some state laws that could be used. There was also the Commonwealth legislation for that we saw the Sydney bartender convicted under, which
is that the menace and harass?
Yes, using that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I've charged a few people with that before.
What was that? Sorry.
I've charged a few people with that before in my policing time. It's a very good offence to capture a lot of the things that aren't picked up perhaps by some of those legislation by state, because
Mhm.
what we have to remember, anything over a telecommunications device makes it a federal offence. It's not necessarily a state offence. However, if there's a victim who lives in that state, that's when it becomes, there's a victim crime, but then there's also a Commonwealth crime that overarches that, based on the fact of the carriage service itself being used as part of the offence. So I guess I don't understand if those, because as far as I understand legislation, and I've got a very general, I was a general duties copper, I've got a very general overarching view of the legislation across the states. And my general overarching view says there's always legislation about what is reasonable. And if it was unreasonable that a woman has been, an image of her has been used, or a he has been used against their without their consent, of something that is exploitative, surely it must be illegal to utilize these apps.
Well, yes,
right?
And Claire McGlynn articulated this very well in a recent piece in The Conversation. She says, having worked closely with victims and spoken to many young women, it is clear to me that deepfake porn is now an invisible threat pervading the lives of all women and girls. This can happen to any of us at any time. She says the possibility of creation alone implants fear and threat into women's lives. In the House of Lords, Charlotte Owen described deepfake abuse as a new frontier of violence against women and called for creation to be criminalised. Why should men's rights to their sexual fantasy come before the rights of women and girls to not have their images used in this pornographic way? And whether those images are shared, of course, that multiplies the harm. It is very hard then to get those images back. That's another issue. You can criminalise it. It should be criminalised and give it a 6-year penalty. But, by the time those cases go through the courts, those images are replicated, untold numbers of times. But just parking that for a moment, surely the creation in itself is a criminal offence, because it means any woman, any girl can be morphed into porn for the sexual use of a man without her consent, getting off on this woman, turning her into a porn fantasy, a prop to fulfill his sexual fantasies, which puts every woman, every girl at risk who is safe. No woman is safe.
Well, Maha, correct me if I'm wrong, but the definition of reasonable is what the everyday person, you and me, and Joe Blow down the road, thinks is maybe not okay. So if it was unacceptable for me to look at that, then surely it's illegal. And I don't understand how this can trump each other, and how an app can be allowed to circulate lawfully, to be honest.
Yes,
I really don't.
So you're going to get to, I've just noticed a burst of celestial light there again. Excuse my lighting there. So I can't control it. It's like the hand of God. But anyway, now, that's right. Like at law school, we learned it as the man on the Clapham omnibus. And then that's the old English standard. What is reasonable is the man, what does the man on the Clapham omnibus think? And that's sort of morphed in Australian law to, I think it was, what does the man on the Bondi tram think, when there was such a thing? Interesting, those notions of the man on the Clapham omnibus and the man on the Bondi tram. How much of our measures of reasonableness have been pinned to what a man thinks. Maybe that's a question to think about. Who is the reasonable person we're talking about? Is it is it your average parliamentarian, your average judge, your average?
That's right. Who's determining it? Yeah, exactly. They're probably all using porn.
Well, let's not make any assertions.
Well, given what we know about the use of porn, I mean, this is groomed and indoctrinated a generation, the boys who are now in high school, creating porn of their schoolgirl peers, will go on to become politicians, judges, law enforcement officers, leaders, and captains of industry. That's the reality. And if they're almost all consuming porn from a very young age, again, what kind of society will this create? What sort of civilization will we end up to? You know, I believe we're breeding a generation of sociopaths, and, you know, go ahead and cancel me, but look at the data. Look at the fact that adolescent males are committing more rates of sexual offending than any other cohort. Adolescent males are now identified as the primary abusers of children. You know, this has not happened before in history. And there's a reason for this. They weren't born this way. Porn has indoctrinated them. And now we have AI putting that entitlement on steroids, making it easy for them to be little porn producers, self-appointed porn producers at school, at home, using their own peers to create and generate this porn and to share it with each other as is happening, you know, as we speak. And the horror for girls to discover this. I've met girls this has happened to, and they're just the sheer anguish and horror of knowing that their images are being used as masturbatory material by boys all around the country and probably globally after they get shared. You know, I met a minor girl that this happened to, and she was so traumatized, telling me that this had been done to her. Explicit imagery had been created from her appearance, her face, just taken from an innocent picture on her Facebook.
Yeah.
So this is where we're heading with this. And who's making the laws? I think this is a valid question. What's the standard here? What's the bar that you can have 157 apps, nudifying apps that say things like best way to pornify your friends, nudify your colleagues, turn women into maids and hentai porn and make them pregnant, give them the appearance of being pregnant. Again, where is our bar here? Why aren't these things already burnt to the ground?
It doesn't make sense to me that they can be permeating basically through our culture when our legislation and our legislation is not in alignment with the way that these are infiltrating our community.
Correct. And even if it's technically illegal, these nudifying apps boast about the protection of your privacy. No one else will see your data. It's secret. It's hidden. You're the only one that'll see it. Encourages the user to, with things like privacy guarantees, prioritize your privacy, no data kept, only visible to user, not saved in browser cache, circumventing detection. So this will all be underground.
Yeah, to me, that just kind of is a recipe for grooming and like a way that I'm just kind of like thinking out loud here, but I can just see a young or a perpetrator, any perpetrator really, is just given like a free rein to explore their inner like thoughts around, maybe even because you can use it to create a naked child, you can use it to create CSAM, even though it's illegal, with this app, then promising that it's not going to share this data or it's not going to release this data, when in fact it means you can actually then create whatever child exploitation material you like.
Correct.
And you know, you do have the ability to share from that app in whatever ways you want, but the legislation is very clear when it comes to CSAM production and creation, is that it's completely illegal in almost every country there is, and it doesn't matter. But now you have an app that's actually enabling you and encouraging you, I would dare say, to create child sexual exploitation material. And I know you can create adult stuff and they think that, you know, somehow that's consensual, but when we're talking about AI, it is, again, it's taking from a real person somewhere online without their consent. However, I feel like this is a breeding ground for one, is going to impede the efforts of law enforcement who are trying to track down and arrest real offenders who are creating real child sexual abuse material. Because artificial intelligence creating this material is actually, it starts to look so much like the real thing that you can't delineate between fake, well, not fake because that's not real, right, either, but artificially artificially created material which has come from real imagery somewhere.
Correct.
Okay. Artificial intelligence is built on algorithms, and algorithms come from photographs and data from images of exploitation. That's how AI makes and decides how to put these things together through a bunch of numbers, that pull data from all different places of people getting exploited. So I just don't understand how it can be okay if it's, I'm thinking out loud again, if it's acceptable to encourage a platform to make sexual exploitation material.
Look at the wording that they use. Unload as many faces to deep swap as you want to generate deep fake nude videos and images. Add faces to all kinds of porn videos and gifs that you love. Nudify your colleagues. Your fantasy, your property. This belongs to you, so you have no reason to censor your spicy thoughts, which goes to what you were saying about this will enable the darkest, deepest, recesses of your mind to be expressed, and
it fucking doesn't belong to them.
Change the age.
Sorry.
Change the age. So, as I said, more sexual harassment, more intimidation, more fear, more trauma in girls who are already traumatized in their schools, which are sites of abuse and at the front line of harmful sexual behaviours. You're going to have more girls refusing to go to school. We're already seeing a rise in school refusal, school avoidance in girls. There's a reason for this. Why would you want to go to school when you're going to be sexually harassed, touched, groped, sexually moaned at, as we spoke about last time, threatened with rape if you don't send nudes? But now, in addition to all those things, being sexually moaned at, groaned at, in addition to all of those things, you will now know.
You're making me very cranky.
Nudes. Hey?
You're making me cranky here.
Yeah, well,
I didn't know about that part you read before, speaking about whatever your desires are. That's
this app and what you create belongs to you, so you have no reason to censor your thoughts. Okay. I didn't name the app.
Images don't freaking belong. They're taking images from other people. That's can we get them on false advertising? Can we shut them down with that? Like
whatever.
Well, you're right to point to other ways. I mean, there's a criminal prosecution of the individuals who are using these apps, but there's also, regulatory frameworks that apply to the platforms, to the designated internet services like, apps, websites, file and photo storage services, and, services which deploy or distribute generative AI models. They are regulated now. There was a new standard registered by the E-Safety Commissioner just a few days ago. But, the regulatory frameworks, the law, are all the legal schemes, all of these are just playing catch up with the AI, with tech-based the tech-based abuse industry, if you like, if you want to put it that way. But technologically facilitated abuse is something I think that is getting away from us, and it is becoming harder and harder to catch up with and prosecute or regulate. This is something, I think no one can doubt the intention and integrity of the E-Safety Commissioner, the Australian, the Australian Parliament too. I have no doubt that, they are just as concerned as we all are, and they're doing, they're doing their best. But really, the genie is out of the bottle, I think, here. And I think, but that said, regulators, lawmakers need to keep trying, keep their eye on this, and do everything possible. So, these new standards, we'll see what happens with those. That is putting the onus back on the tech industry to take responsibility for what it has created. Yeah, to take, because let's come back to so there was this Sydney bartender that is an adult male. The full force of the law should be applied. It was there. He was given a 9-year sentence. But we look at teenagers like the schoolboy from Bacchus Marsh. What do we think should happen to silly schoolboys? And I don't want to trivialize what they're doing. Some of this conduct is seriously criminal. But I keep coming back to the point of us, the adults in the room, taking responsibility for the world that we have created. That's what the buck stops with us. This happened on our watch. I have to say, I met Melinda personally only recently, but I had been following her work for years before then. I remember, Melinda, I don't know if I've told you this, I started reading your work when my little boys were being born, when they were babies. And I started reading what you were writing about pornography. And then I read about, the backlash that you were subjected to on that. And the sort of casting you as almost like a wowser. But I remember sitting there thinking, I'm a reasonable person. I'm giving birth to male children here. These are potential, these can be potentially good men or potentially abusive men. I agreed with what you were saying. But what's interesting to me is a lot of the things that you were saying, Melinda, years ago are now being spouted, coming forth from the people left, right, and centre, as if we've just realised, this is a terrible thing that's happened, the internet, pornography, and it's just something that we're coming to grips with, and we've got to do something about it. But I think I told you I did a little test for myself, and I actually Googled Melinda's Twitter, posts for the last few years, and I could tell you, I swear, the language that I saw, I thought, I'm seeing this being articulated in exactly the same way now by people as if it's brand new news. What I'm trying to say is, yes, the internet technology, these are new developments that we're trying to catch up with. But the problem was there before. The problem, the pornification of culture, the normalization of sexual abuse in different ways, that was all happening before. The technology that we have now is simply enabling it. It didn't create the problem. It's facilitating it. It's exacerbating it. It's
profiting from it.
But this is something that we as a society have to take responsibility for. And we had fair warning of, I would say.
Yeah, at Collective Shout, we first went out on nudifying apps being sold through Twitter in 2019. And I don't understand why the social media platforms are allowed to promote these apps and this content and host them, profit from them. We want to see fines of social media platforms for allowing these apps to be sold through their platforms. We want to see a ban on all nudifying and undressing apps, and finding social media platforms for not removing the reported content. I mean, these deepfakes are being shared everywhere, so-called deepfakes, based on real women and girls. We need to add that caveat again. So they're magnifying the harm. But thanks for saying that, Maha. I do appreciate it. It's front page of our papers now. It's in online every day, this issue, which is a great thing happening. It's a tipping point now, and social media companies are being held to account. I'll be testifying before the Parliament next week in the current social media inquiry. I'll be talking about all of this in the parliamentary inquiry on Wednesday. So it's definitely a shift, definitely a change. And I think because the global research is so solid now on porn fueling attitudes that drive violence against women, also, even without the data, even without the evidence, the daily lived experience of women and girls, the experience of families trying to raise healthy, happy, resilient children that are up against it. We hear at Collective Shout from parents every day with another horror story. School that I was in recently, boy, year 11, had downloaded a sexual slavery contract and targeted girls to get them to sign this contract, including minor girls, and he got one girl to sign it. And I probably can't say too much more about that case because it's a current case. But I mean, I agree that the platforms have enabled it. The adults in the room have completely failed their duties to children, and now we're seeing the results of that, aren't we? In our schools and everywhere else. So
Yeah, well, let's hope that these new the new standards, that the e-safety commissioner is registered, that they get, that they actually have some effect.
Well, look, I'm glad they're doing. I'm glad they're requiring the industry codes of practice. But e-safety's had to go back to industry a number of times because their previous codes have been so weak, and they keep getting rejected. Like, this is just the next round of trying to get some decent codes. The other thing that disturbs me about the new process with these new codes in their development is that e-safety has instructed industry to work with the porn providers. The porn providers are the criminals here. The porn providers have profited from trafficking, child sexual exploitation material, rape videos, non-consensual image sharing, drugging, minors, and creating content that way. This is a criminal enterprise. There are over 100 civil actions now of women and girls, boys as well, whose images were used. Often they were drugged, raped, and their images used on Pornhub, for example, which was called before the Canadian Parliament Ethics Committee to give an account for all of this. This is not the industry you consult with. This is the industry that has, I believe, should be, charged with crimes against humanity. Crimes against women and girls, certainly, because every woman and girl now is in danger. The nudifying, undressing apps, the so-called synthetic production of explicit images, it's all just another outworking of the porn industry. OnlyFans is now trading in these images as well. This is just layer upon layer upon layer of abuse of primarily women and girls that the porn industry started. So why is e-safety telling, social media platforms, tech platforms, gaming platforms, all of them, consult with the porn industry and working this out? Like, they don't want to protect children. That's their business model, groom the next generation of porn consumers. They don't want age verification. In the US, Pornhub is pulling out of multiple states who are requiring Pornhub to verify ages. They'd rather shut down in those states than have to comply with child protection laws. Don't even get me started. It's too late. I don't even remember what it was.
Well, yeah, it's the unholy alliance of
it's the unholy alliance. How do you
the unholy alliance of porn
with a criminal enterprise that has profited from crimes against humanity? That's my question.
Okay, so I was referring to the unholy alliance between the porn industry and the cyber libertarians, I think, as Michael Salter has called them, and cyber libertarians.
Yes.
This sort of free speech and privacy and these really important rights that are, in some people's minds, more important than a child's right to safety or women's right to safety.
The porn industry doesn't deserve free speech protection. It's a misuse of the First Amendment and our own laws here.
And look, in the regulatory world, regulators are always having to literally deal with the regulated industries. They need to have regulatory frameworks that will work. They need to reality test them with the industries. That's normal and expected. It's a little bit hard when the regulated industry we're talking about is the porn industry, So I think that's right. It creates a whole lot of complexities. We know, for example, that the e-safety commissioner has had to water down rules forcing tech companies to detect child abuse and terror content on encrypting messages and cloud storage, because big tech firms warned it could lead to mass government surveillance. So, that was when the e-safety commissioner announced draft standards last November that would have required cloud and messaging services to detect and remove known child abuse and pro-terror material. There was an outcry by the tech industry about, you can't force us to break encryption. We have to have encryption. It's, this is surveillance. And so, these are fairly powerful players, and politically and economically.
Oh, yes.
It's not, and so it's not just, it's the porn industry, but it's also big tech players.
Yes.
And the cyber libertarians. That's right, Melinda. It's that kind of
They're all in bed together, pardon the pun.
Oh, Jesus. Well, on that, can we just steer across to like the organisation of sextortion? I really want to touch on that before we run out of time tonight.
Sure.
And yeah, well, we're talking about the weaponization of AI, and you know how I really want to talk a little bit about the impact on the victims and survivors as well, just to really kind of bring home how you know, yes, there's a debate to be had and there's legislation to be made, but you know, the real issue is the harm that's created, and the victims and survivors who don't feel like they have a voice in any of this. All the people are talking about everything around them, and I think it misses the real harm and the impact on the victim and survivor. So there's a lot of grooming and there's a lot of coercive control that happens in here, and it really traps particularly young people because it's so confusing. Often they come from people that they, you know, either know or have connections with, and so they feel like that they're safe. I'm not particularly talking about the deep fakes, but in the sextortion kind of world, you know, and it can happen within minutes, or it can happen through someone they think is a friend or has created a profile that they've befriended that they think is someone that they can trust. So I'd love to steer over to that, because this is something that educators have brought to my attention particularly. I know the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation in Australia here takes over 300 reports a month from sextortion complaints. And I know from, I think it's the Cyberbullying Research Centre, that 10% of children who report have suicidal thoughts or attempt suicide.
Yeah.
So this is what I would like to address before we run out of time, because this is the issue facing a lot of parents, particularly the listeners who have children. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, AI is being used to generate profiles of realistic-looking women, and it's being used to trick primarily young men. And there's been a 400% increase in 18 months of reports to police of sextortion, and all of those involved young men. So a boy is online, he's scrolling, he sees a message in his chat from, you know, a hot young woman. He starts to chat. Within minutes, she has sent a nude picture. He sends one back, realizes he's been tricked. Pay up $500, gift cards. If he doesn't pay, he's threatened with distribution of his picture to all his networks, friends and family. If he does pay, then he's demanded even more, blackmailed to an even higher degree, because the trickster, there's this idea that it's one person sort of rogue element operating. These are criminal gangs operating often out of Nigeria, West Africa, out of slums, entire criminal enterprises. And often they're running, you know, thousands of accounts and targeting boys across multiple platforms. So if he does pay, then he's even more vulnerable, because that the fraud gang knows that he has money, has access to money. And tragically, boys are taking their lives. Like last year, a New South Wales boy took his life within 4 hours. 16-year-old, I think he was, within 4 hours of discovering that he'd been tricked. We need to normalize this conversation, because if you have a son and he's online, he will be subject to an attempted scam of this nature. Sadly, that boy was so ashamed that took his life. So we need to normalize it, and so boys know this will happen to them, and they need to tell a trusted adult. Don't engage in the conversation. Shut it down. Screen capture the account. Report to ACE. And don't engage, don't send money. Know that it's normal, and get help.
Yeah, and on that, Melinda, I know myself, when I was policing, I had so many young men just because this has really only been happening in the last 5 years. And in the last probably 12 months of my service, I cannot count the number of young men that turned up to make a report. Up to, I think the oldest one was 25. Okay. So it's not just young men, it's youngish, like, you know, older than 20, even older probably.
Older. It's happening to male school teachers 60 years old, 60, 65.
There you go. And you know, when they have this happen, they revert back to being a child, because I can tell you right now, they're so afraid and so ashamed that that's what they've done. That, you know, there's this. I remember this young man shaking. He was shaking when he was disclosing to me, and he was so afraid. You know, and I'm a pretty compassionate sort of person, and so the way that I dealt with that, I thought I did a pretty good job. But I can imagine the kinds of language that's used, or the victim blaming, or why did you send this? Why did you do that? These gangs are trained to coercively control and manipulate and humiliate these young men. That is their modus operandi. That is the way they do business in order to sextort these young men. It's the way they take advantage. It's the way that they win, through this humiliating, you know, thing that they've got going on. It's awful. It's awful, and it is killing our young men. So we have to understand that. And if a young man discloses, it's not like, why did you do that? You know, try to avoid the whole victim blaming. Why did you do that? You know, you shouldn't have done that. That makes them want to shut down. Yes. So just deal with it. Be like, all right, what do we need to do now to stop this? Okay. And the ACE have a great sextortion pack, information pack on their site to give you the steps on how to deal with that if you're in Australia. I don't know about internationally, sorry, but they have a great step-by-step guide, and there's ways. You probably can't get it completely offline, but there's ways the E-Safety Commissioner can support you to try to have the material removed. Yes. So please make sure that you follow up through the ACE if that's your child.
Definitely. The National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children internationally also has resources, including a really brilliant 7-minute interactive experience that you can have with your son to understand. It's traced through the life of a 15-year-old boy that this happened to, and just to help normalise it and help them to know what to do.
Okay. Well, I might drop that in the comments if I can find it after.
Yes.
It's worth doing. I actually tried doing it myself and went through the different, you know, you get to choose at different points what to do, and then it'll sort of play through the scenario as you choose, you know, choose your own misadventure sort of thing. But yeah, it's very effective.
Yeah.
Jen from Not My Kid has commented, terrifying, I had no idea there were so many apps available. Yeah, I think most people don't. I think they think it maybe is just sort of, you know, 1 or 2 at the dark reaches of the internet. This is all mainstream. 127. My colleagues and I had looked through some of them yesterday, my team at Collective Shout, and what was interesting and disturbing was you didn't actually have to own an account to see what they would offer. Like, they were advertising straight away, straight out porn of how you could pornify your girlfriend, pornify your mates, pornify your best friends, pornify schoolgirls, pornify your work colleagues. We were offered imagery straight away showing how you could transform a normal picture into a pornographic image, and we didn't even own an account. That's how easy it was to view.
Wow. Yeah, I get really kind of upset, and for those who don't know, I'm doing research work now with the lab I work at, which is the artificial intelligence for law enforcement and community safety, and our primary goal is to create algorithms and ways to counteract online child sexual exploitation. And part of that is the project that I'm doing, where I'm interviewing victims and survivors of online exploitation, and to get their perspective of how this material is used by industry, right? So it's been a very eye-opening experience so far. And whilst I can't give any results at the moment, because obviously we're still going through it, one thing that I do notice, and it's the courage of the survivors coming forward to share what they have experienced, but the exploitation of these people whose images have been used is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
there's many of these young women who have been stuck in organized abuse. And I know, Melinda, you said it so quickly before, it almost kind of felt like I know you weren't brushing over it because you were saying it, but I don't think people can internalize the seriousness of what actually occurs. These are women who have been trapped in organized abuse circles within Australia. So organized perpetration, so trafficked, sent out to men in the community who have paid either parents or family so that they can be exploited sexually. They have been filmed. They have been had their imagery sent and distributed online for the world to see.
Yeah, forever.
Forever. The greatest fear many of these women and men have expressed is, who is going to see my material? Right. Am I going to be identified? Right? And I don't want this to be for nothing. I don't want what's happened to me to be for nothing. Because it's stripped away all of my agency. It's stripped away all of my autonomy. What else can they do to me? It has destroyed every single part of me. And I want to make sure that it's really clear that I know as a victim survivor what it's like to be sexually abused, right?
Yeah. Yes.
To fucking think about some asshole, someone else I don't know, watching that shit.
Yeah.
Fucking shame.
Abuse never ends. You're being abused over and over and over again. Right. Every day, a million times.
Women, this is what these women and men are experiencing, and these young people who didn't even give consent, who don't even know that they're being abused. They don't fucking know. And then out of nowhere, they get a call from police going, oh, just letting you know, you've been sexually violated or abused on this app by this person. And then there's no training, there's no thought, there's no understanding, there's no resilience, there's no awareness. Like, these young women have no fucking idea what's happening to them, and then for them to just be, it's just being thrown in their face.
Yeah.
Right? Their agency and their control is being completely fucking stripped away from them.
Yep.
So if anything, I want people to understand, in spite of the regulation, in spite of the political stuff, there's a fucking real person being hurt here. A real girl, a real woman, a real child, a real young man who's being exploited and harmed. And that real child, that real person has to live with this for the rest of their freaking life.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought it around to the victim survivors, Kelly. That's just,
it has to be.
It has to be.
I was just going to note that Vanessa has asked what was the name of the video resource.
Yes, and No Escape Room.
No Escape Room. Yes, if you go to noescaperoom.org, you'll find it.
Yeah, NCMEC, National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. Yeah, I looked it up too, and I saw Vanessa's question there. Yeah. And the other resource Kelly mentioned, which was the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation, has resources on sextortion as well. But yeah, Kelly, thank you. I'm really glad you brought it back to the survivors, the victims whose images will be used for perpetuity. We did a chapter on this in the Big Porn Inc., exposing the harms of the global porn industry. Dr. Helen Pringle wrote a chapter there about a survivor who said it was just like being raped over and over again, every day, knowing that your images were out there forever, being enjoyed by untold numbers of men, shared in global galleries, collections throughout the world every day. And that must be an exquisite form of torture, a unique form of torture.
I think, and I think that there's sort of a paralysis around, being able to regulate crimes which are transnational like this. Laws are generally nationally based. There's some extraterritorial application in some, very, very few cases. But generally it is, laws are designed to apply in the country where they're made. But these offences have no borders. So this is the brave new world that we're in, and it will require international global collaboration between regulators as well. you know, to work, as well as police. I mean, police have been doing that for a long time, haven't they, Kelly? You know, Interpol has.
Yeah, and they do. They 100%. They try. So look, traditionally speaking, I think police have really struggled to work globally and collaboratively until the last maybe 10, well, actually, hang on, how old am I? Maybe the last 20 years, perhaps, you know, as they've realized that these internet crimes and, you know, have become so prolific. And that's, you know, the work of like John Rouse and the team establishing Argos. And if you're interested in that journey, watch The Children in the Pictures.
Oh, yeah.
It is a fantastic documentary about the work of Argos and the establishment of you know, the investigative unit that basically led the way in terms of how to identify the children in these exploitation images. And so that global collaboration effort has extended to, you know, Interpol, and the team has established and started this amazing work of task forces around the world who are working together to save children. And yes, we're proposing a very dark and stormy kind of, you know, picture, because we really need to make this real. Like, I'm very passionate about making this a real picture. Like, please understand the fucking seriousness of this shit, right? But there's every reason to hope. And I talk to survivors all day who are they're freaking broken. They are broken adults like me who haven't been able to break through the cycle. Like, I don't have every day is not a fucking good day, okay? Like, we survive and we get through, and we still have these patterns of behavior that we don't like. We still got shit that we can't deal with. There is not one survivor who can say, I'm completely healed. I don't have any, like, you know, bad moments because of what's happened to me as a child. Like, there is no one that can tell you that. And if they do, then they're probably lying. Okay. So it affects you lifelong, right? These women and these men are broken because there's a system is broken, and everybody needs to start fucking talking to each other and working together to change how this space looks. But there is every reason to hope, even though there is every reason right now with the realities that we're presenting to be completely devastated by what's happening to our children. But there are regulations coming out. There's amazing work. There's amazing conversations. I mean, look at this fucking powerhouse of team people here. Like, we've got Melinda, I've got Maha. I mean, me, come on. I mean, look at this face, right? Come on. Like, there's every reason to hope, because we have amazing people deeply committed and deeply passionate about saving kids and doing this work. And I work, they're on the ground, they're in schools, they're working to save kids, they're, you know, going out of their way to do what they can, to make reports, to believe kids. You know, there's every reason to hope. There's every reason to hope, but we have got to stand together.
I think look, it's, you know, those of us have been working in the safeguarding space, of fighting for children's rights, you know, for years, have been, you know, working in this space for a long time before this explosion. Now that, you know, we're seeing, you know, we know that we have to take the fight somewhere else now. It is like being in a war, and the front line is shifting. It's moving, and we have to go to where the battle is, and this is it. It is the digital space, the digital environment, which is so much harder to regulate than the physical environment, but we have to go there.
Yep.
Yeah. And look, I just want to acknowledge both of you too, because we're just coming to the end, but I just, Maha, you talked about Melinda's work that you were looking at before you even met, and the role that she's played in, you know, helping you, even the ripple effect, raising your young men.
It's been inspiring. Yeah.
And likewise, like, I've, you know, picked up on both of you, and there's a ripple effect with, you know, how I'm learning from both of you. And I know, Maha, your work with the Royal Commission, and Melinda with, you know, the advocacy with Collective Shout. Like, I just have to honor the pair of you from me for the work that you've done in this space, you know, on behalf of survivors, but me just personally going, fucking what two inspiring and amazing women. And I know, and we've had an amazing conversation. I had the best cup of coffee with these two women, I swear to God. It was just beautiful, because, you know, we really shared on a really vulnerable level but just to know, and I know myself how hard it is to do this work, and it's not like you don't just kind of get up and, I mean, I do kind of fluff around and get my coffee or whatever, but it's a 24/7 job. Like, I don't sleep. And I know, Maha, Melinda, Maha, especially when you worked at the Royal Commission and the work that you did there, like, you don't sleep. So I just want to thank you both for the ripples, for the work you've done, for the work you're going to continue to do, and you can't escape me because I will get you back.
We don't want to escape you. We don't want to escape you at all, and we appreciate you bringing your lived experience to the table as well. That should inform everything we do, first and foremost. So we thank you for that, Kelly.
That's right. You know, it's so important that all this work is survivor-led.
Yes,
it is. You know, you guys are the real experts, and we have got a lot to learn.
Yes,
actually. So thank you, Kelly, and thank you to all survivors who we continue to learn from and be inspired by.
That's right. Yep. Look forward to sharing some platforms with you soon, Kelly and Maha.
Oh, yes. That sounds coming up. Well, let's just throw it out there for anyone who likes the sound of the three of us spouting at you. We will both, well, all three of us, will be speaking, and we've just had a bit of a change of plan. We're now going to do a 2-hour workshop at the Trauma Aware Education Conference on the Gold Coast, at the Brisbane Exhibition Centre on the 31st of October to the 2nd of November. I will put the conference registration into the comments. So if you are listening to this, you are welcome to register. It's open to all educators and those working with children. A brilliant conference of educators and people working with vulnerable kids all over Australia. One of the best conferences I've ever attended, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. Lots of different approaches to working in a trauma-informed way, but also how to apply trauma-informed practices and principles with these top-tier students. So they're the ones, the 20%, but usually it's about 5% of the school that repeat, that continue to come through your office, that continue to have problems. They usually have complex case management with multiple people from different organisations working with one child. Very, very serious considerations for these young people. So it's a very important space to be, to try to reduce this re-victimisation and re-traumatisation of children through the education system and working with trauma. So please come. That was a long-winded
promo.
But it is absolutely a brilliant space to be. So we will be presenting a 2-hour workshop on harmful sexual behaviours, a little bit of trafficking. So I think it's vital to be able to identify this. I don't think we see it for what it is. And that's another conversation I plan to have on Off the Cuff with Kel. But something that needs to be spoken about as well. So moving forward, I would love to see you all again in a fortnight's time. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Maha, for being here. If anything from this episode has been triggering, please make sure you head to my website. There's some phone numbers there, or reach out to me. And if you would like a copy, I've got a free book called Reclaim Your Freedom, 8 Cycle Breaking Strategies for Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. Please grab that. That will lead you into a little spiel from me, but hopefully soon, I will get the last of the videos done for my Foundations for Freedom course for survivors, and you will be the first to hear about it. So hopefully that happens when I can get my shit together. All right. Love your faces. Thanks for being here, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Kelly.